Before I start the discussion, I would like to give all our discussions 1 minute of remarks on our topic today. And I would like to start with Dr. Cobello. Remarks, opening remarks on our topic of anti-corruption.
Okay, I'm just starting with a couple of books because I love books. Books are the memory of humanity and one of the main strategy for development. One is by Vandana Shiva, is Earth Democracy, concerning the environment, how the environment is spoiled. The other one is from Gandhi, Nonviolence and Development. It means there is a possibility to development without violence. And those are pillars of anything against corruption. But I will talk about it later.
Okay, Kennedy.
Okay, I didn't carry the book. Allow me to give my opening remarks. This is very important for my discussion. I will just read quickly. Democracy and human rights and environment justice are interlinked, forming the foundation of just and sustainable society. While democratic institutions provide governance frameworks that ensure public participation, human rights protect fundamental freedom and environmental justice, promote equitable access to resources. However, in many African countries, and I think we are coming back home, including Kenya, these principles are often undermined by weak governance, corruption, economic interests that prioritize profit over social and environmental well-being, resource exploitation and land dispossession and environmental degradation remain significant challenge that is increased by political interference, weak enforcement, and mechanism, and limited access to justice for the affected community. And I propose that to address this effectively, we need to have sustained collective action from government institution, civil society organization, and international partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha, please.
Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone. Do you have energy? I know it's after lunch. My opening remarks will be opening questions. So, some things for us to think about. One, do we think corruption is only when people steal billions, or when a person is donating to a church and not saying where the resources come from? Is that corruption? Yes or no? When we have members of parliament who are both oversighting national funds, but also in the same breath responsible for CDF, is that corruption? Food for thought. When your relative is given a contract in the county government because they're a friend of the governor, and they're not a bad person, they're just, in fact, when they are praying in your WhatsApp group, they say, it is the grace of God. Is that corruption? So I can see people saying no. So the truth is, corruption sounds different when it affects us. So perhaps the question we should ask ourselves, what is our collective conscience as Kenyans? What does corruption mean to us? And when it affects us personally, is it corruption or is it a misunderstanding?
Good afternoon. Woza. My name is Sitati Elvis. I'm the founder and CEO of Uamuzi. So basically, Uamuzi is a social networking platform. It's an alternative social media platform that what you guys use, where we are trying to give the young people in Kenya a safe space and equal opportunity to be part of decision-making process at every level of governance, where one, they can be able to have a meaningful engagement among themselves and also with the elected and aspiring leaders at their convenience. This is where now we need to keep our leaders accountable. Two, they can be able to access verified and credible information on time. And also they can freely express their thoughts, their ideas, and their concerns. So what I can say is We are seeing a new wave of accountability, and that is by the use of technology, and which has helped us to expose fraud, and also communities can easily demand for transparency. We've been able to see civic engagement and also digital activism. So I'm happy to be here and also just to be part of this engagement. Thank you.
Leonard.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Youth Cafe, for inviting me here today. My name is Leonard Wanyama. I'm here thanks to my two roles. I am first the International Relations Society of Kenya Chief Executive, but those are some of my members clapping there. But I'm also the regional coordinator of the East African Tax and Governance Network. That therefore puts me at a cross-section of democracy and diplomacy. Now, for the purposes of this discussion, I just wanted to tie into what my co-panelist here, Natasha, spoke about by briefly drawing the arc of history about this corruption topic in Kenya in a very brief sentence. For 20 years, we fought for our rights as a country, which culminated in passage of the Constitution of 2010. From that time to now and going forward, we know our rights. But what is happening is that we are now thinking about our responsibilities in that constitution. Who does what, where, how, when, and for whom? With that in mind, that is simply a question on legitimacy. And so, other than the question she raised about when corruption is touching your personal interests or directly affecting you, there are conversations that we need to have about the loopholes that affect that legitimacy. Those are loopholes in the law. Those are loopholes in the logic, as she had inferred, in terms of when corruption is close to you, you start changing your position, but also in the language. Those loopholes are the ones that determine the legitimacy of policy or the illegitimacy, and put you on the right platform to fight corruption. Because I could also extend a question: was it corruption when the finance bill was passed last year? And so that is the space of thought that we see. And we've been working in terms of simplifying tax language that kind of culminated in the awareness that you saw last year with lots of other groups in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is raised by Wanyama and Natasha. The question is that we're here today to discuss and find solutions. John.
Yeah, thank you very much, Youth Cafe, for having me on this panel. I work as a legal officer at the Thomson Reuters Foundation, which is the corporate foundation of Thomson Reuters, one of the world's leading content and information services company. We work to harness the power of the media and the law and data intelligence. And in terms of this topic on corruption, we did a study last year and published a report called Illicit Financial Flows in Kenya, Ghana, and Tanzania, Understanding the Law and Opportunities for Reform. It's available on our website. But as an introduction, I would just like to highlight the amount of resources we lose as a continent. UNCTAD reports that we lose $88.6 billion every year as a continent through illicit financial flows, through corruption, and all these flows of money out of our continent. And so we need to ask ourselves first, what does this mean? Like, what can this money do if it is put into our health sector, into our education, into development? And so it's quite a significant amount, and I think this discussion is quite timely to see what we can do so that we can cap this flow. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll start with you, Wanyama, and I'll return back the same question you ask yourselves to you. Can you describe what corruption means in context of Africa, not in only Kenya? What does it mean for Africa region?
Thank you. There is levels of corruption. First, there is the quite obvious theft. And tying on to what my colleague there mentioned about illicit financial flows, there is the theft. You go and just steal the money. There is the nepotism. Then there is unseen corruption in the sense that you have loopholes in the law that allow you to take resources that are needed for the public sphere legally. Because it's legal, we call that immoral. And so those three levels then bring us to the fighting side of this, where we have tax justice, where we are fighting against the illicit financial flows. That is the loss of money legally in terms of avoidance by mega companies. And then there is the tax governance aspect, where now we are talking about the questions of anti-corruption, anti-money laundering, which are fights against crime, evasion, people who do not want to file. So there's that criminal element, and then there's that immoral element that we are fighting, where public resources are diverted or stolen and affecting communities negatively. Thank you.
Thank you. Sitati, would you like to add?
Yes, yes. Also, in context to that, we can also talk about bribery. How many people in this room they have never given any bribe? Are you sure? When you talk about bribery, this is where public funds are diverted for other things, and this has a negative impact on our development, and it has a negative impact on many other things that we do. We also have election rigging. This is something that is very common in our African context. I don't think there's a time where we can be able to say that there's an African country that they have been able to hold free and fair elections. Maybe we can talk about 2002 in our own context as a country. But other than that, we've never seen anywhere where we can say that our elections have been free and fair. And right now, even when you talk about things like technology, I believe when we imply things like technology and emerging technologies like blockchain, this is a system where it cannot be manipulated, or it cannot be it's immune. So I believe that once we imply some of these technologies, then it can help us to be able to fight some of this corruption. We can also talk about state capture. This is where powerful people manipulate the law so that it can be able to favor them. And many a times we normally talk about top-down approach when it comes to policy being given to us, because they believe that that's the only way that they can be able to benefit themselves. And these are some of the things that are really affecting us as a continent, and especially as a country. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course.
Thank you so much. Maybe I needed to say that Ahadi Governance and Research Consultant is a governance think tank. We do a lot of research, consultancy, and capacity development. There's one that is emerging. There's what is called budgeted corruption. In budgeted corruption, you are doing a budget at a ministry, and you make an error of 0.01 or 5 trillion. It looks a small one. You can even come and apologize. Sorry, it was just an error of 0.01. But that could mean funding for a whole county. And I think when it comes to the issue of corruption, we are happy with the corruption. Look, in 2022, there was a law that was taken to parliament, be passed in Kenya, to regulate the amount people can use during campaign. It was just delayed, and thrown away. And again, we went to the same circle. So during election, there's a lot of money. Where is this money coming from? And how will it be recouped back? And we appreciate when we get money because we are going to elect someone. So we actually believe sometimes that by electing a corrupt person, we will get a good leader. I actually summarize and say we have bad manners.
So who do you think, just to ask you the follow up, who is supposed to investigate that money? Who takes it? Where does it go? Who do you think is its role?
You know, it's you know, there are different perspectives. One, there's one who glorify. When I'm being given money as a citizen to vote for someone, and I'm lining out to give, I'm glorifying corruption. We have to stand up and say no. Two, our institutions don't seem to just function. Somehow there's a way we delay things until the last minute, and then we bring in. So look at this. That the EACC here, like in Kenya. Sorry, I'm using a lot of Kenyan example. They can't prosecute. So you investigate, and then give to someone to decide whether this case makes sense. We have seen clashes in court where the EAC says we are removing this cause. We don't want this to be removed. We see the DPP say this case should be removed. This is the same government. So I feel we have all the responsibility. And for me, I think the hope we have as Kenya or as Africa are Gen Z. Gen Z came in with a lot of force that we are tribeless, we are not corrupt. They are even presenting a former Chief Justice as their preferred candidate for presidential election in 2027 because of corruption records. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Let me go to Dr. Cobello. Can you describe corruption from a general social and sociological perspective?
Okay. I want to tell you that corruption can be prevented, first of all. And it's a question of two phases or multiple phases. I will reach it at the end with the three proposals to prevent it. Very easy to apply, and they don't cost a lot indeed. But first of all, I want to analyze the society from 3 points of views: the normal people, poor people. Second is from rich people point of view. Third, governmental point of view. Okay, and from poor people, I want to describe where, my opinion, of course, it's a little bit provocation. I have no time to explain everything. Where does social consciousness come from? Social awareness come from? Because it's easy to talk about things when you are poor and you're begging in the street or sending children to sell something to survive. So normally it comes from 3 pillars: love, time, death. It's common for everyone. Love is everywhere, everything, not only for children, family, but love even for the environment, for something clean, for beautiful buildings, everything. Love is also a demonstration of how the government loves its citizens. Love is everywhere. Second is time to build up something. But let's go a little bit deeper about love. Love is also respect. And there is not only one part of the society, it's common for everyone. And justice, also a symbol of love. And then time. Time is dedicated to education. If education is not free, how can you have time? Your time, life expectation in Kenya is 60 years old for women, for men even less. You don't have time. And if you don't have resources, you don't have education. So why? I'm always asking to myself, why this kind of society without love? Of course, if you don't have education, you don't have job. I admire my friend from Italy that they are training youth here to find a job, but low pay job, unsatisfied. And in the hotel, I was inquiring, asking. They said, I don't like my job, but I have to do it to survive. Is that democracy? Is that, of course, you can be corrupted very easily if you're in those conditions. And then when you have awareness and you have education, rules and laws, it's easy to apply because people, they know them. They know how they respect the respect of everyone through that. Then the third pillar is about health. Health is connected with justice. Health is when you see 2 million of children a year dying under 5 years old in Kenya. Is that, can you trust your government? You can be corrupted very easily to survive, to make your children living. Why do you have to pay for health? And you are citizens of a country. Then I come to the rich people. Of course, people, they're looking for the army to protect what they have. Of course, for them, it's easy to see an elitarian society, the American standard, for example, where rich people, they are getting more money, they're greedy, and they don't consider what the other things. And it's easy to be corrupted there because you manage money, it's not corruption, it's sharing. And why I don't want to talk about the big corruption of companies coming here and buying for cheap resources and selling for very expensive abroad or something like that. This is a very high level, but a lower level, normal level, standard level is this one. And this is made of egoism. Some people, they don't look at out of the society. They look at the love to see the beautiful in everywhere. And then it's easy to control. You want to control. You want election. You want that kind of democracy, which is very strictly connected with the government. And I finish with this one. And of course, the government, politicians, they want election, equality, justice, social order, protection, because it's for rich society. It's easy. They are supporting this point. But ask to a family who has polluted water in the houses because they don't have money and they got sick and they cannot afford the health system. Then I have some suggestions. First of all, prevent is to start to create, why not to create a faculty of pedagogy for social justice? To teach in primary school, primary. In Europe, you know that it's compulsory education and it's free education. Why not to teach how to believe in a society they will build up together? It doesn't exist kind of pedagogy of equality and social justice. Doesn't exist yet. Why not to create a free master? And we will do it. We are doing, I'm coordinating a huge network of education institutions in Italy and all over the world. A master in pedagogy of social justice for free for everyone in the world to assess and to give free possibility to education. Because education means learning and you got awareness and consciousness. And then finally, we are creating in Europe a kind of movement of youth called blogger, YouTuber, influencer for social justice and against fake news, even governmental fake news, because the power defends itself. But please think about another kind of society, not the one elitarian and we call it structured like you have. Think about something else, horizontal, where people are persons more than money or more than power or more than social position. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Cobello. Let me come to Natasha. From a legal perspective, where are the enforcement gaps and how can they be strengthened?
Thanks. I'd like to begin by reading a section from a Supreme Court ruling from the case of Mike Sonkobuvi, a petition of 2022. And the Supreme Court ruled, it bears mentioning in conclusion that Chapter 6 of the Constitution was not enacted in vain or for cosmetic reasons. The authority assigned to a state officer is a public trust to be exercised in a manner that demonstrates respect for the people of Kenya, brings honor to the nation and dignity to the office, and promotes public confidence in the integrity of the office. It vests in the state officer the responsibility to serve the people rather than the power to rule them. That is a ruling by the Supreme Court. When it comes to legislation, we have various laws that regulate the fight against corruption. I'm going to begin with the law that governs us all as Kenyans, and that is the Constitution of Kenya. We may all be familiar with Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya. And the Chapter 6 is what we call the integrity chapter, what governs us, our values as a nation, what we say we fight against collectively as a nation. And I just want to bear mentioning that our constitution was developed for those who are younger than the age of 20. The fight for the constitution was a response to years of inadequate representation and responsiveness to the issues and challenges that Kenyans faced, but also we'd come from a very difficult time between 2007 and 2008. So some provisions in the Constitution, by the way, are a trauma response. For example, when we say in the Constitution, the president cannot be sworn in after 5 p.m. The reason is because we had a president sworn in the middle of the night. So while some provisions make sense, others, again, are genuinely a trauma response. And when we talk about the provisions in the Constitution, I now want to go into what has been operationalized, and that's legislation, the Leadership and Integrity Act, the Public Officers and Ethics Act, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, the Public Audit Act, and there are many legislations that govern the fight against corruption. But I want to briefly touch on the Leadership and Integrity Act and the loopholes therein. For example, it states that a state officer shall not have any other gainful employment. And then it also states that a state officer shall declare when there's a conflict of interest. The law does not define what a conflict of interest means, and it's vague. And interestingly enough, the courts have refused to define what a conflict of interest means. Therefore, that is a loophole that has been abused by state officers. Secondly, the Leadership and Integrity Act does not cover public officers, which then means a lot of county officers can get away with abusing the Public Procurement Act. And they've continued to do so extensively because sometimes the laws that seem to govern national state officers sometimes ignore county officers. And again, that has been a loophole. What we say when we devolved finances and resources, we also devolved corruption in Kenya. We now go to the Public Officers Act, where it says after every 2 years, officers shall declare their financial resources. When was the last time you had anybody declare their resources? Even in Parliament, when potential state officers and public officers are being interviewed, the only thing they do is say, I have 50 million shillings or 100 million shillings. In a country that does not have industries, how is it that 1 + 1 = 50? Is this an abracadabra nation? We need to ask ourselves, how is it someone can declare they have 100 million shillings? They've never had any industry of note. They don't come from a family of the Rockefellers. So why is it that we are not asking these questions? So that is another loophole that is there. We have the Ethics, of course, and Money Laundering Act. I want to now touch on what Kennedy talked about. And that's actually one of the beginning of most of our problems, campaign financing. We have many young people in this room who want to run for political office. One of the reasons you can't is the cost of running for office. It costs roughly $140,000 to run for MP. How many of you have that in your pocket? So what then happens to the average? To run for MCA, even I come from Kajiado North. To run for MCA in Kajiado North, you need a minimum of 7 million shillings. How many people can afford 7 million shillings? So when we see people spending on a weekly basis, not less than 1 million shillings, and we don't ask where these resources are coming from, what are we creating? What monster are we creating? And what questions are we leaving for young people? And I think collectively, when we even think about the Public Audit Act, one of the amazing things about our constitution is the creation of constitutional commissions. We have the Office of the Auditor General, the Controller of Budget. And one of the ways that the executive has tried to tame these constitutional offices, one, is to withdraw funding. So therefore, you have offices without officers. You have offices that constitutional offices that cannot carry out their constitutional mandate because they don't have resources. Another example I will give you that we don't consider corruption is the overlap of institutions. We have the National Gender Committee, and Equality Commission, sorry. Most recently, the executive launched a task force to fight against feminism. I mean, not feminism, femicide. Why do we need another task force when there exists a constitutional commission? Is that not another form of corruption? That we have denied one institution of resources and then we are creating another one. So when we think about that, these are so many layers that we need to consider. It's not just legislation, but as someone who has drafted laws, I drafted the Public Finance Act and many others. I want to say you cannot legislate good behavior or morality. There's only so far legislation can go without us consciously asking ourselves as a nation, what are we allowing from our leaders? And I would like to just challenge Kennedy, because Kennedy said we are relying on Gen Z. I feel that is a very unfair expectation to put on young people. Because then you're saying, what are the other Kenyans doing? Are they sitting and waiting for Gen Z to put their lives on the line? And then they wake up and say, hey, Gen Z hoye. No, you have a right, not just as a parent, but as a Kenyan, to involve yourself in matters governance. Not just to say, hey, let's leave it to Gen Z. Because also, as young people, let me finish. While I loved what we did last year, the challenge that young people faced is an absence of political education and historical context. And that is where people like us need to come in and say, we want to help you understand the legacy and history of corruption and political struggle in Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. There's a lot of gaps, so thank you. May I please first congratulate John for his recent report about the illicit financial flows in Kenya, Tanzania, and Ghana. I'd like to ask you a question different than your report because time is just running out. What role does technology, including open data and digital transparency tools, play in improving governance and exposing corruptions?
Yeah. I just also referring to the Gen Z protests, which are quite fresh. You noticed that there was a lot of information available to the public, like all kinds of information, including, phone numbers of people and all that, and who owns which company. So in terms of resource governance accountability, there is the concept called beneficial ownership, and some of you may have heard about it. And this is where you get to know like who is the actual owner of a company, because on paper you can have someone written as the owner of the company, but in actual sense they are not the owner of the company. And so we need to look for solutions, technology-based solutions that can help us as a continent, so that this kind of information is accessible to the public and they are able to, it is in a form that they can understand, because that is also one thing that we learned, that it is not enough to have this information in a very high profile report. It needs to be broken down in a way a woman in the village will understand what this means for them. And so that means also the media plays a critical role in demystifying and breaking down a lot of these complex terminologies, a lot of these complex reports, a lot of these terminologies that people don't understand, because that's how they will know this is actually what this new finance law means for me, or this new act means for me, or this activity by this company that is evading tax. That is how the common we call them the common mwananchi in Kenya. That is how they are going to understand. So there is really a gap for information of dissemination of information, especially by the media, and also because nowadays also everyone is on social media. And so we need, and even for CSOs, because we publish a lot of reports, we need to ensure that these reports are accessible to the public. They are in a language, in the local language. They are in the street language, like Sheng. So this is also another initiative that even CSOs need to take up, so that information is made available to as many people as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to call on the podium our Ignite speech, Corruption versus Democracy, the Battle for Integrity in Leadership by Stephen Kariguro. Please welcome.
Let's welcome him. ESCC has been named several here. The man from ESCC, Karibu Sana. As he gets to the podium, please let's get online. We are live on the YouTube Global Democracy Coalition Africa Forum 2025 YouTube, and we are live also on LinkedIn and Facebook and Youth Cafe. Thank you very much and welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are you today? My name is Mongela Mbiti. I am representing the head of corporate affairs and communication, who is Mr. Stephen Karuga. I work for the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Allow me, on behalf of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, to appreciate the organizers of this forum for inviting the Commission to be part of this event. Now, speaking after I've listened to the team here, and of course the shots that are coming from both sides, especially against the Commission, I will be very particular on what I will speak about and very careful. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is a constitutional commission that is mandated to lead the fight against corruption. This institution works together with other institutions, and note that I said it is mandated to lead the fight against corruption. The chairperson of the commission and the CEO, speaking in many forums, have said that this is not just our fight. This is a fight for all of us. And when we see youth come together at the national level, na mashinani, we feel that we have partners who can take the bull by its horns and ignite a conversation about corruption and where we need to find ourselves. Now, when I was given this responsibility to represent the Commission, and when I saw the topic that was shared with us, coincidentally, on 3 years ago, on 28th of March, 2021, if I'm not wrong, I wrote a piece, an article in the Daily Nation, linking the campaign financing or campaign expenditure with after or rather post-election corruption. Now, our democracy is founded on many principles that I do not intend to regurgitate here. But trust you me, when you look at our campaigns, our electoral systems, our institutions, and where we are in the fight against corruption, there is a very, there is a very huge connection. Now, having said that, this topic for us is not only timely, but very critical, because corruption as we know it threatens our very fabric of our society. It forms, it undermines democracy, like I've said, it erodes public trust and stifles progress. Now, when leadership and public officials engage in corrupt practices, they betray the very essence of democratic governance. As we know, democracy is built on ideals of fairness, transparency, accountability, and service to the people. Now, it is a system that envisions power being exercised by those elected to serve the people, with their actions being held accountable by the people. Now, EACC is committed, from where we sit, to fighting corruption. For those who have interacted with us, our mission is to promote integrity, combat corruption through law enforcement, prevention, and education. Connecting corruption and democracy, we look at the aspects of the checks and balances. Like one of our panelists has said, the Constitution creates various institutions that check each other. We have various institutions that check the executive. We have the National Assembly. We have constitutional commissions and independent offices, and many other institutions. Now, when we say corruption undermines democracy, we mean that the legitimacy of institutions is diminished because either it is infiltrated by corruption inside, or the people in power assume positions and they attempt, to manipulate processes. And very classic, a classic example you have seen very recently from the National Assembly, the members of parliament attacking constitutional, office holders, those that are empowered to check, the office of the Auditor General, the office of the Controller of Budget, attempting to, to manage them. In politics, the way they say you try to manage because of the impact that they have. So when you look at those institutions, if they are not able to perform, then we cannot have consistency in the fight against corruption. Now, the last thing that I would like to say, of course, is with relation to campaign financing and its impact on post-election corruption. Like one of us asked here, we have seen that our elections have become way too expensive. Now, these public officials are being funded by private entities. Once they get to office, we see a very consistent trend that they manipulate procurement processes to ensure that those companies that participated in their campaigns they get, the contract and whatnot. So we see, and finally,
Please. Finally.
yes. Our call to action as citizens, or rather also as young people, is to be part of this fight. It is not a one man's show. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's clap for him. But now we want to allow Maryam to stand and you sit. And then you're part of now the questions. We get just 3 questions. Is it, Maryam? So you help me, you just send me to someone. Quick questions. She direct.
We'll take some direct questions from the audiences online and in person. Okay.
Is the ESCC back in the panel? Okay. As an active citizen, it becomes very ambiguous to me to listen to my own government saying that it can't do what it's mandated to do. So I have a very direct. You've mentioned something about there being an evidence of the executive or the legislature manipulating systems, and misinforming and disinforming in other relevant spaces to achieve whatever contradictory they have within their private entities. Are you empowered to follow up on that as the ESCC? Do you do the law enforcement on such instances? Because the fraud that is happening in government is not too new. It's very much there. And we're seeing also Kenyans deliberately handing out these auditations, even online. Are you empowered, and is it safe for you to actually follow up on these cases? And do you have examples of successful cases that the ESCC has been able to overturn against when it comes specifically to corruption?
Okay. We need to be balanced, so I'll try to take the gentleman at the back with the black t-shirt. With the eyeglass.
Yes, first, thank you so much. I'll say my name again. I am Jared Oye, an interim council member at NYC and a member of ODM party. First, so unfortunate standing here before you. I think in East Africa and Africa, this is the only place that we stand to discuss corruption at the same time democracy. When you were there at the group discussion, we asked ourselves whether democracy is really existing within our country. But again, why must we discuss corruption as a country? We are all sitting here discussing corruption, and we know what should be done. We are making it a norm and a normal thing in our life, which is unfortunate. My question now, I want to ask I forget his name. I've forgotten his name. Sorry. The system of higher education in the country is not working for us. We have been taught, nurtured, and streamlined to be consumers, not to be innovative, and not to be able to invent new ideas on how to do things. It taught us, we were challenged there that are we able to invent our own ways Africanly instead of borrowing heavily from our former colonizers, European nations? Second, my brother, such an intake. Second is I loved how Natasha put it there very clearly on why young people may get it very difficult getting into this space. Personally, we are sitting here and a number of us in here, we know that has been very difficult penetrating these political parties and even the political space where we are trying to put our best effort forward. We have the most expensive campaign and election in Africa to elect the worst leaders to lead us again. So we young people of this country, we have 3 phases to do election in the next 2 years, where we will be elected. Some will fight to be elected. Others will be going to the ballot to vote in. But most importantly, we must stand up strongly to oversee our election. The other day we said that one of us was going to be to be a member of the commission. Even if one will be there to present us, we are still going to watch this election at the ballot. So we, the young people, must take charge of our country. We're not going to let them run away with our nation as we see and as we know. A number of them will not be there in the next 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. They're planning a country where they're not sure whether they will be there in the next 10 years or 20 years. We must take charge of this country. And it's so unfortunate, I'm challenging the organizers of this conference here. We will not be standing here in our next generation, in our country, discussing corruption. We need to execute them. We need to make corruption a capital offense. We chill them, we hang them, we shoot them, and froze their accounts even to their generation. Thank you.
Viva, ideas, viva. Do we take one more or we stop at that, Maryam?
Okay. Okay, that lady.
Last one.
Red and white.
We have to start the other panel. We have also to be mindful about time. Just the question. I'll hold the mic for you.
Good afternoon. My name is Okeo Rose Atieno. I'm a student, a third-year student at Rongo University, pursuing political science and public administration. So I really want to echo what he said, that we have the most expensive election in our country as Kenya. And mostly members of parliament get to spend a lot when it comes to election. And when one wins, you would want to replenish back the funds that you lost. So I think this leads to corruption. So my question is, are there strategies or ways where we can put or rather guide so that the members of parliament don't get to spend so much and then later on come to steal so much? And it's really, really dragging our country as Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we allow them to respond each in a second or 30 seconds. So we have to get to the other panel.
All right, thank you very much. I will start with the very first question. Whether the EACC does have capacity or is capacitated to fight corruption. I will say yes, to the extent that the commission is empowered by the law. There are various statutes that provide for the specific mandate of the commission. And in the recent past, we have seen the prioritization of cases, high impact cases that have led to conviction of high profile personnel. And you will agree with me that in the last 1.5 years, we have had, let's say, like 3 governors who have been convicted for crimes committed while they were in office. Even though the conviction has come after they have left office, but still we feel that it is a place that we were not before, and an encouragement that in fact there is no one who is safe. So that is one. Then number 2, I could say no to a certain extent, because the capacity of the commission to fight corruption relates to its resources and personnel. Now, in terms of capacity and personnel and expertise, the commission does have. But now the resources to one of the panelists saying that we devolved corruption to the counties, and trust you me, it is exactly what we did. So we have 47 governments which are the theft is going on in all those counties. So there is so much we can do, and that is what we encourage the members of the public to help us do. The second question on campaign financing. Now, we have a legislation, and then we end regulations that were given by the IEBC, and then Parliament rejected those regulations. And again, you see, we are trying to guide on spending, and the people who we are trying to cap, to cap the spending for, are encouraging us not to cap the spending so that they can spend more. So the question that we should ask ourselves is, when are they intending to get the money that they want to spend in campaigns?
All right. Maybe we can allow the rest to say just a word in a second. Imagine the other panel is getting very late.
Okay. I would just like to comment on her question also. The study I mentioned surveyed different countries in Africa, and one of the issues that was surfaced as a gap was the lack of specialized courts to deal with corruption and financial crimes. In Kenya, we are lucky; we have the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Division. And if you actually would compare, you would realize that Kenya is actually doing better than other countries in terms of enforcement and in terms of accountability with regards to corruption and financial crime. So just encouraging CSOs and also representatives from other countries, please go and check whether you have a specialized court in your country, and that could be a good point to lobby the government on. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, let's talk about a different perspective of corruption. Have you ever seen a political person, what is has promised or she has promised before election and what she or he has been doing after? Was it the same? The opposite. Why? There's someone who decides over them. Why the country has given the power to produce currency to banks, private banks, and not their own power, to produce currency for citizens, to make wealth of people. Why they give it to a private bank or to private banks? This when by agreement, international agreement, only government should produce currency to make people wealthy in the country. Money is just a tool. Money is not really something for corrupting. It's a tool for a certain power to rule.
Sure.
That's the problem. Education is the only way out. Is the only way out to enhance the level of awareness among people. And until education is so expensive and not free, like in most countries, even in Brazil, universities are free. You will not have people
Thank you.
a wide awareness. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Let me be very quick. The reason why we celebrate Gen Z, it took Gen Z to ensure that the president threw away all the cabinet. It took Gen Z to bring president to the Twitter. It took Gen Z to throw away the budget in our history. Now let me go to the next point. The next point is this: why are you furious about election and budgeting? In Kenya, our election budget is going up. This is where we are. As we increase, we have never agreed who has won. We are always in the Supreme Court too. We have not provided the best platform for women to participate. 3, youth are struggling to get into electoral process. Number 4, in 2022, we had almost half of the counties without people with disability as representative in the county assembly. It will be unfair for me not to say that. So the more the budget goes up, the more we get confused. We are actually asking what is the issue. But let me tell you, we have a hope. My hope is that as I close, that we have we can do this together. That together, we can build more just and transparent country. We just need to hold together, work together, and come out to be counted. We have a starting point. Thank you.
Thank you. Rodrigo, I think we should allow Natasha to have the final say before we wrap up.
Actually, if they're not speaking, I will not speak because you have brought panelists from across wherever we've come from.
We will have.
And I would actually rather give up my chance, but let them speak.
We will have it all.
On MC,
We will
please
have
calm down so we can actually
will have it.
engage with the audience who've given of their time as well.
Indeed.
Actually, what
It
you're
is-
doing is
it is my-
policing
it is
us
my
in a
bundle,
negative
and I will have the
Thank
final
you.
say. Then you
I
do
needed
it
to
all.
say that.
Just be brief.
Two things. I really want to address the lovely lady from Rogo and the gentleman from the ODM party. And I want to say this. Protests are one way to engage civically, but not the only way. We have MPs who are oversighting and have budgets on CDF that are unconstitutional. we need to take them to court. Number two, when your MP has a forum he's attending or she's attending, you need to go to those events and ask them difficult questions. Make it uncomfortable for an MP to comfortably give 5 million shillings at an event and not say where that money is from. Because you know where that money is from? It's from your taxes. Number three, how can you engage as young people? I run an organization called Futurelect, and we prepare young people to run for political office. I want young people to run for elections. Reach out to us if you're serious about running for political office in 2027. Reach out to us. I have my wonderful colleague there, Maseke. We are preparing and training young Kenyans to run for political office, and not just young Kenyans, young East Africans. Finally, I want to say something, especially around political education. While protests are effective, the gap that we have is understanding how governments and systems work. So it is upon us as Kenyans to understand what the law provides, so we can challenge legislation where it's relevant, and so we can engage effectively and ask the questions that are necessary. And finally, I would like to address my fellow counsel from the EACC. I'm not going to be very hard on you because I know you are just an officer, so you may not have the powers to do what is necessary. I will be kind and gracious, but I will say there are many opportunities that the EACC has refused to take. And I get because there's lack of political awareness, but also lack of political will. Where do we have, what happened to Anglo leasing? What happened to the issue where we have a current governor, a two-term governor, whose case was not resolved? I'm not going to mention the governor. We have a governor who was accused, a former governor who was accused of murder, sitting and engaging as a state officer. What exactly has the EACC done? It is not enough to say, oh, woe is me, we can do nothing. If you can do nothing, and I want to say something as Kenyans, there's something called the sociology of politics. And what happens in the sociology of politics is putting a former bishop, or he's actually a current bishop, as a chairperson of the EACC. What that does psychologically, because we are a nation of believers, you say, okay, then if a church elder is leading the EACC, then we are okay. So what then that does, it pacifies you not to ask questions. Because again, I want you to understand political strategy. That is how politicians work. So when you begin to understand how they work, you begin to develop strategies counter how they work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, my good friend Sitati, try to be briefest.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll just answer the gentleman who asked about innovation. So yes, other than us taking advantage of innovations from outside, we need to take advantage of our own innovations. As I told you when I started, we built an alternative social media platform. I know you guys are on X, TikTok, and what have you, but it's unfortunate that we don't have our own social media platform. So currently, as you know, the current social media platforms, they are there to help us to communicate among friends, families, and colleagues, entertainment and fun. But for us, we've brought in the governance aspect. And ours is very beautiful because we've decentralized the engagement in such a way that, you know, these other platforms, they give us an opportunity to have a national engagement. But there's so much corruption and with our devolved system where we need to have this engagement. So there's something that has been going on in the past 1 week called Mzungu as a service, where our innovations don't really thrive because if you don't have a white founder, it's very hard for you to fundraise. But now we need to be able to have a system in such a way that we need to take advantage of our own innovations and support our own local made platforms. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally.
Thank you. I'd like to conclude by saying in 1999, a group of young people sat down and developed pathways for their future up to 2030. Everything they thought about was published and has happened and is still happening today. You are 5 years, 2030, start thinking of the years that are coming after that. But hold on. How does that happen? Because I really want to touch on what the questions that came in. You see, be very careful, and this is not to dampen your zeal. Be very careful not to repeat the mistakes, very recent mistakes, because all that is happening now happened between 2005 and 2007. Organize, don't agonize. This is a daily occurrence. You have to work at it, as Natasha is talking about it. This is daily, every space, every time. These issues are complex and layered, but for us, we come into this conversation by going into the legacy of human rights, where we take a human rights based approach that says you have to do a panel, participate, look out for accountability, ensure there is no discrimination, there is empowerment, because that is where your future question comes in, and the legitimacy that I referred to.
Thank you very
And
much.
that, before you close, because
Please,
it's
we have to go to the
important, there are
next
just
section.
three things that I do it in brief. The question of structural transformation is very important, because you will have to think about the jobs you are creating. In this country, we don't have any other bigger employer than government. But you have to think of yourselves, the industry that will come in, and all that comes in through fighting for that space democratically. And that is the issue for you and your generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, for the panel, take a group photo as you conclude. Sorry, I had to rush you, but of course, time is a very important aspect of everything that we do. Thank you very much. Let the panel take a group photo. And as we take the group photo, we invite the next panel, and I'll start with the moderator, Diana Tuyashime. Please take a group photo with your panelists. Diana Tuyashime, the co-chair, Citizen Voices Action. And the panelists will be Zaha Indimuli, founder, human activist, Amani Community Organization, Mr. Emmanuel Ojosani from Nomad Foundation, Santiago Baril from European Partnership for Democracy, and Brian Gethenji, Executive Director, Coordinator Policy Action Initiative, European Union Youth Sounding Board, and Sankara Kennedy. Please help me to welcome the panelists here. And also, we thank you very much, and thank you, Maryam Salah, for coordinating the panel very well. My ushers, please help me to have the podium well set. As they come, I want to invite, you're already here. Welcome very much. So in 2 minutes, I want to welcome All right. I've been allowed in 2 minutes to invite an Ignite speaker who is called Crisedi Bwanga, Governance, International Affairs, Communication and Youth Development Expert, to speak in 2 minutes. Perhaps you should be here, my good friend, to speak so that also the panelists can comment to it. And he's a case study of youth leadership and activism, so that the panelists can also comment on that as they carry on. Welcome, and please make it the most brief speech ever in the world.
I came all the way from Zambia to be rushed to speak in 2 minutes. Allow me to. I was actually supposed to speak earlier. The MC was the one who rushed me to speak at this moment in time. But I'll try by all means to speak in a manner that will be as exciting as possible. So I think my purpose is just to fire up the session that we're about to have right now. My name is Mwila Bwanga. I'm from Zambia, and my field of work basically evolves around politics. I think we've talked about so many things, from morning up until this very moment. As I begin my talk, allow me to start with something. In the year 2021, I made a bold decision to run for office as a member of parliament in my country. I ran for member of parliament in Inchanga constituency. I was only 27 years old at that moment in time. And during that time, I came to fully understand the stereotypes, that have been placed on young people who aspire for leadership. That too often, young people are often seen as innovators of political chance, We are often seen as vuvuzelas. We are often seen as cadres, rubber stampers, and kingmakers. Rarely are we seen as leaders. And as many of us might attest to that effect, that when I ran for office, I came face to face with the realization that politics in itself is not a cheap sport, ladies and gentlemen. But regardless how confronted I was, how limited my resources were when I ran for office, I gave my best in that particular race, that I was able to come out third in a race of 5 candidates. Do I aspire to run again for office in 2026? Definitely. As many of us would attest, one thing I've come to understand when I ran for office is that though I may have not won that seat, I won the hearts and minds of many young people across my country. Because at that moment in time, many of them, perhaps who had never even thought of it, now have the ability to understand that it's possible. That it's possible for us to organize as young people. That it's possible for us to lead. That it's possible for us to even represent ourselves as an alternative. When I ran for office, I was an independent. I was not part of a political party because I understood that it's very difficult to get a political party adoption. Allow me to put it on record that as young people, we are not waiting for an endorsement to lead. We are already ready for leadership. We're not waiting for the government to create a conducive environment for us. We are shaping the environment. During my little political adventure of 2021, I learned something important. I learned that power does not shift easily, and change is never given freely, and many speakers have alluded on that. It is taken, it is built, and demanded by those who refuse to accept the status quo. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and comrades, today we stand at a critical moment in our history as we witness democracy being tested and in some places even being weakened. The climate crisis is no longer a problem of the future. It is happening now. The decisions made by leaders today will determine whether future generations are going to inherit a world of sustainability or a world of survival. But across Africa, as we are going to see in this conversation we have today, the young people in the streets of Nairobi, the young people in the streets of Lusaka, Johannesburg, Cape to Cairo, they are shaping policies. They are not only protesting, they are organizing. They are not only protesting, they are running for office. And we ought to ensure that we amplify that story. Because the only way we can inspire a generation into leadership is when we tell their story. Let us be real. The heart of environmental justice and politics in itself is political will. And political will is constantly under threat. It is threatened by politicians who put their interests above the people. It is threatened by industries that put profits above the planet. It is threatened by industries that intend to see climate change as inconvenience and instead of an emergency. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I want to leave you with this. That as we sit in this particular room at this moment in time, let us begin asking ourselves key questions. We, the young people of Africa, are the custodians of the future. And the future begins now with us in this room, in this moment, and in the choices we make. The question is not whether change is coming. The real question is, will you be the one to shape it? The time of sitting back is over. As I conclude, allow me to tell you that the problems of our continent are inevitable. But as a people, we have to be the inevitable solution to our continent's inevitable problem. The MC has been talking to me as though it is a football game. He's been telling me to stop. Allow me to stop right now so that I may give a chance to my colleagues to speak. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Diane Tushim. I'm from Rwanda. I'm the Deputy Chairperson of Citizen Voice and Action. This is a youth-led non-governmental organization based in Rwanda and Benin. It is dedicated to foster civic engagement, protect democracy, and enhance youth leadership in governance. So today I'm very honored to moderate a very important topic which is going to tackle the the barriers, the challenges, and identify the solutions of youth participation. Youth participation is very crucial to foster an inclusive governance. Yet there is many barriers which are still hindering youth to participate fully in the democratic reforms. So give a warm welcome to our panelists who are going to share their insights and experience on this very important topic. So
Sorry, Angel Budhia, one of the panelists, has just arrived. Please join your fellow panelists.
you're welcome, Andrew. So let's start. We're going to explore the various obstacles that you face and identify the actionable solutions that can be employed to promote youth participation. So within 2 minutes, everyone, each of you, one by one, is going to share with us an opening remark on this topic. So let's start with Angel.
So the last ones will become the first. So thank you very much. I am honored to be seated before you here. My name is Angel Mbuthier. And in my younger years, I wanted so badly to become a journalist. But I was swallowed up by the students' movement when I was a student at the University of Nairobi, where I served as the vice chair of the organization of Nairobi University. And that threw me into even working at the Continental Students' Union, which is the All Africa Students' Union. And while I was a student leader, I left Nairobi. I went and worked in Accra for about 3 years and served in the All Africa Students' Union. So I have a good understanding about our continent and the passions and the heart of young people in Africa, not just even in Kenya. Currently, I chair the Youth League of the Jubilee Party. The Jubilee Party is a former ruling party who the party leader is the former president. And we are in the opposition and backing the Gen Z movement like never before. Today, as we talk about our challenges, I think when you have served as a student leader, you are thrown right into the pool of what youth challenges are, from working with student unions in Kenya, in East Africa, and in Africa, understanding how we engage with the private sector, with government, and even with the rest of society, and what actually shapes us. One thing I know is that the students' community is the creme de la creme of our societies in Kenya and in Africa. So this is a special sect of young people who are set to lead the nation and set to transform the nation. And especially for Kenya with Gen Zs and millennials, we are about to deliver this country, and I cannot wait to see what that looks like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Zaha.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Zaha Indimuli. I serve as the National Advocacy Lead of the End Femicide Kenya movement. I am a researcher and a social scientist, but importantly, I'm an active citizen, a woman by default and by nature. When I think about the topic we're handling today, I'm very tactful. I think I had already started the same fire in group 3. Maybe for me, it's to remember that within my conversations and my engagement here, the work primarily becomes to represent, to agitate, to educate, and to celebrate. We have seen young people show up in the most marvelous ways. Kenya being a specific country that has seen this to effect. We have seen the digitalization space taking shape. We have seen participation, not just politically, but we have seen democracy going back to the hands of the people and being implemented by them, by a country that has not been known to do the same. Kenya is a very good example of just how significant it is to not only educate the masses, but equally improvise them with tools constitutionally needed for them to do their job. And Kenyans never want to be told twice. Kenyans will ransack you and move 10 steps ahead of you. And that's what Gen Zs have been able to do together with the rest of the Gen Zote. I think this discussion would just open up what exactly are these barriers? How intentional is it when we say we want young people to participate? And how important is it for us to keep going in defiance? Because again, we have been called treasoners and arsonists. I think then the language the government can actually understand and provide evidence to is violence and arsonry. So that be ideological, that being the organizing, and that being in the belief that this country is in our hands and it's our responsibility to keep at it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Jambo. Hey, was the food a lot or what? Because it's very hard to talk when everyone is silent. So let's do it another time. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Jambo. Asanteni sana. My name is Brian Kithinchi. I don't like this introducing with titles, but of course I have to do it now. I always like to call myself a free thinker. But yes, I work for an organization called Policy Action Initiative. And at Policy Action Initiative, there's a lot we do. But one thing that I always repeat, and we always repeat as a team, is that we are a group of young people who have gone into the research space. Because for far too long, when it comes to research, data collection, data analysis, you would never find young people. And I'll give you a short story. When I was working at GDC Africa in the year 2019, I once attended, we used to attend so much of the launch of reports. So there was a report that was being done by a certain organization and they were launching it. And I looked at the room, it was all old people, 40s, 50s. And then I'm there, the editor wants a story back. And then you are there, you raise your hand. Everybody is ignoring it until you have to shout. And when you shout, people are looking at you like a madman. So the speaker even ignored the question. But it's understandable because one thing when you talk about breaking barriers is that for very far too long, young people, and it's very true and it's very good for us to do the protest, but it's also very good as well for us to engage in the boardroom processes because at the end of the day, if we are not on the menu, we are going to be eaten. That's sadly. If you are not there at the boardrooms where the decisions are being made, where the information, and sadly most of the time in Kenya, most policy discussions are not based on data or they are based on data that comes from outside the country, which may not reflect, which is always based on desktop reviews or based on reports like the UN reports, which we know that they don't go on the ground to collect, but that's a story of another day. So when you look at it from that angle, if young people who don't engage in these processes, we are left out completely. And that is one thing at Policy Action Initiative that we do. On this topic about breaking barriers, because I didn't come here to talk much about myself, I have to respect the audience. I would like to ask, among us here, how many of us have a voter's card? That's nice. How many of us have a constitution? A copy. So you guys are an informed audience. You should clap for yourself. Because one thing that always pains me is that whenever we go for this, because you hold so many of these capacity building sessions and debates, and one thing that always pains me is that whenever you go to the ground, you find that young people, somebody comes with very good passion, good arguments, but then you ask him, ukona kura? Hana. So you wonder, okay, that passion, how is it going to be translated into action? And that is why, as we talk about breaking barriers, we have to focus on one thing, the Registration of Persons Act 2012. Because this law, which is a remnant of the Native Registration Ordinance that was brought to us by the British when Kenya became a colony in 1920, this law restricts the issuance of ID cards. Believe it or not, 80% of the estimated 4 million Kenyans who don't have an ID card are between the ages 18 and 25 years. So whenever you hear this argument that young people don't participate in elections, or only 41%, like the report that the Youth Cafe brilliantly did last year, don't participate in elections. Why is it so? Because young people don't have ID cards. Why don't they have identification cards? In fact, the law says clearly that not having an identification card if you are above the age of 18 years is a crime, that you should be arrested. But still, why don't young people have it? Because the processes of getting one is very bureaucratic, and at the end of the day, it relies on an administration officer, and we know our government we can't really trust. You know, the last panel, as I conclude, the last panel I had my colleague from the ESCC saying, our work is to lead. And that is a very good statement. Everybody wants to lead, not take the action. However, if you're going to have a budget of 4.2 billion shillings, I don't think leading is the only thing you should do. Unless I'm wrong, 4.2 billion is a lot of money. And when you look at the expenditures, you see that most of the money was spent in office development, refurbishing their office. But that's a story of another day. So for me, breaking barriers, you have to look at the Registration of Persons Act, and we'll continue the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I would love to start with querying the MC, but I just noticed that he's not here. I wanted to ask why he left my middle name, pronounced the last three letters, and jumped to my surname. Well, that's by the way. So my name is Emmanuel Sani, and I am a legal practitioner and programs officer for ProMat Foundation, and I am a Nigerian. So people say my intonation, they already know that, oh, you don't need to say anything, you are Nigerian, we know that. And I'm proud to associate myself with Nigeria. One thing about ProMat Foundation, where I work, is that we are passionate about pushing youth participation in politics. And that is why this particular engagement is very, very vital to us and not just you guys here in Kenya. So far, we have been working around how we can utilize evidence-based strategies to promote participation, transparency, and accountability in governance. We believe that when these three things are put together, we can then have efficient implementation of government projects, government policies, and government programs that would benefit not just you and I, but for people in the grassroots community. To me, the people here now are elite youth. But the people I believe we should be engaging more are those people in the local communities. Those ones that do not have direct access to internet, those ones that if you give a mobile phone now would find it difficult to even log into any Facebook account to join you in sharing, retweeting, or doing what have you. So we are really particularly interested in that demography. And over the years, we've been working around the social accountability project to engage with these people. There are a lot of infrastructures that is supposed to be going to those locations, infrastructures like schools, no water, healthcare system. And then our politicians have this money allocated in the budget that do not go to implement this in those communities. So we go as far as engaging with those people to build their agencies, to demand accountability from their leaders, because we know they have representatives representing them in government. But what you discover is that most of them are settled down in, maybe if it's in Nigeria now, we say they are in the Federal Capital Territory. I have a local government chairman from Kogi State, where I'm from, but he's with me in FCT Abuja, and he was elected by the people to represent people in Kogi State. So you can see the kind of funny situation there. And to me, breaking barriers, going to the theme of this particular day, would be we as Africans redefining what democracy means to us. Have we really thought of what does it mean? And when I'm talking about redefining democracy, because it is very, very important that we get what it means, we get it in principles. We might be applying it differently in our respective countries, but then we have to settle what it means to you, what it means to me. And when we are able to put that together, it would make implementation of the democratic processes and principles for Africa more easier. And one thing I'm looking forward to is where young people get to directly participate in decisions that concern us. These people, like other speakers have spoken, they are going. So we need to step up to the game and make sure that we understand the concept of democracy and how it could move forward. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Manu. My name is Santiago Barrell. I'm from the European Partnership for Democracy, so I am based in Brussels, Belgium. Thank you very much for the Youth Cafe for the invitation. If you guys didn't know, the Youth Cafe is a former partner of my organization and a former partner of the Youth Democracy Cohort, a platform of around 400 organizations, a lot of them African, that are working to advance youth political participation. I just wanted to share my 2 cents a little bit on the state of youth engagement worldwide, but very specifically on Africa. We have a lot this narrative that young people are against democracy, right? You've heard that? Yes? Cool. But I don't really see it. I mean, I get the data, I get the surveys, I see that, I read that. I don't see young people carrying out military coups in the Sahel. I don't see young people coming out to the streets being like, let's not hold elections, voting sucks. I don't see that. I see young people turning up in Senegal to vote for the opposition candidates in a very, very restrictive environment. I see young people in Liberia signing a peace agreement during the elections to uphold peace, the young people. I see young Kenyans coming out to the streets to protest against government repression. That's what I see. And I work with a lot of young people, and a lot of them are here present in this room who are driving real change. So I was actually really happy about how the colleagues from the Afrobarometer presented their stuff this morning, because the track record of autocracy and the image of autocracy isn't very good either. Just as the same with democracy, I think young people are frustrated with the way that the government is engaging with them. They're frustrated that they're not getting enough ways to participate. Young people, especially, are very, very informed. You guys spend a lot of time on social media, right? You get your news from there instantly. A lot of stuff worldwide. So you know a lot more than previous generations, and you want to participate a lot more. And since we're there, and since there's a lot of young people in the room, I also want to add 2 things. Young people need to engage in 2 ways. Let's call them twins. One of those is the activist side. That one, young people have always been very strong, still very strong, coming out to protest, taking part in informal movements, student movements. Young people have always been strong there. The one side that we're missing now, and that's like the good twin brother of the activist side, is the institutional side, is the way that you engage with governments and seeing the value of that and being realistic about it as well. You're not going to get a meeting with your government officials and change everything just in 1 hour. It's going to take persistence. It's going to take a long-term strategy advocacy plan. It takes time. Let's stop painting this engagement with government that once we get it, we achieve real change that you can change a country. It's just not like that. It's not like that for young people. It's not like that for old people. It takes time. So I'll leave it at that and then carry on. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, good evening. My name is Range Mwita, Range Mwita from the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. I have been working with political parties to ensure that they create space for young people in this country, Kenya, around inclusion and also young women towards influencing democratic decisions. A few years ago, I was a youth. I don't know how I found myself here. I'm trying to relive the last life I lived. So a fundamental question I have realized, even when we have the Gen Zs uprising in this country and setting the agenda for the global discussion around democracy building, is to what extent are young people in Africa viewed as opportunities as opposed to threats? I think and believe that if you look at how we have been managing and handling the young people in this country and across Africa, we view them as threats as opposed to opportunities, because when you have the Gen Zs going to the streets to demand their rights and accountability, those in power think that actually their positions are in a threat, they're threatened, and therefore they may not be able to give them an opportunity. And that also cascades down to the institutions that we have, including political parties. We have political parties as the primary vehicles for elections. But if you look at how even they conduct their party primaries in this country in particular, how elections are run, the affirmative action seats that are constitutional, and the people who are given those seats to represent the young people, you realize that they are tactically or deliberately given to people that are not going to represent the interests of the young people. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, yourselves, the young people, is how do we organize ourselves to be able to defeat this perception of you being the threat to democracy as opposed to being the opportunity to our democratic institutions. Finally, there is a gentleman here who contributed about how we should deal with the issue of political corruption in Africa and in this country. The question we need to ask ourselves, like Kenyans, is the constitution of Kenya ahead of us? Because we was talking about we need to deal with those corrupt people who steal our democratic ideals and rights. We need to kill them. We need to jail them. We need to make corruption a capital offense. But how do we tackle that given the constitutional order that we have as a country? So I came to this panel with more questions than answers, and we're going to find answers collectively in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing the thought-provoking opening remarks. So let's proceed with deeply with the aspects of youth participation. Dear Anjo Mbutia, youth participation in politics is very crucial to foster an inclusive governance, but their involvement is still limited, and there is where it is not even there at all. As someone who used to engage with the political and governance issues, what are the systemic, economic, and social barriers prevent you from participating in politics in our Africa region?
All right. Many barriers prevent young people from participating in politics. And leave alone young people, even young women is even harder because we are still at an age where we are dealing with teenage pregnancies. There's the aspect of drug abuse, there's early marriage, there's female genital mutilation. There's so much that goes on in the social issues of young people. I think we could go on and on in this conference. We need almost a week to discuss that, or even more. But when I look at the system itself, I also ask questions from the system because we are having our election in 2027, but here in Kenya, you feel like the election is next year. And so currently, the Electoral Commission is conducting interviews to shortlist commissioners. These are commissioners who will ideally midwife the election. And in that commission, of about 7 expected to be appointed, they did not shortlist young people to interview for those positions. And Kenya is expecting to have about 6 million new registered voters in 2027. This is about an increment from 12 million who voted last year. We're expecting 6 million more. And that will hit the register of voters to about 30 million. So young people will be at the center of the next election in Kenya, and the Electoral Commission did not shortlist any young person in that list. We had to push a lot with other young people from different sectors and ask that they shortlist. So now, when we wrote to the selection panel and asked them why they did not shortlist any young people, because we went ahead to write to the selection panel asking why they didn't shortlist. And they told us that because of the requirements listed, which is for a chairperson, you need to have 15 years of experience. And for a member of the commission, you need to have 10 years of experience. We are not qualified to sit in the IBC, in the commission, but we are qualified to die in the streets fighting for governance and better leadership. So we have gone ahead to petition the selection panel, and we now have a petition in court that is going to be listened to on the 2nd of April. And why? And the selection panel and the IBC, and we need to look at the act again on IBC and see why it is leaving out young people in a decision-making platform. And then we have gone on to see that government has been doing that, leave alone the Kenyan government, even other governments in Africa, requiring people to have 10 years of experience, 15 years of experience. That is ridiculous. We need to bring county governments and governments to court to explain why a certain position requires that many number of years of experience, because counting votes, let's say for the IBC, the commission, counting from 1 to 30 million, why do you need 10 years of 15 years of experience to do that? I mean, counting. So we need them to explain to us why, where we see even like in Botswana, where we had this lady called Lesogo Chombo, who is the minister for youth, 26. So why are we disenfranchising young people even in our own systems politically? Even forget about the other social issues that I just mentioned. Politically, the face of our governments are showing us that, guys, you are not welcomed here. As much as we want to protest, going to the streets, and we even get killed, because if 1,000 of you go to protest in Kenya today, all of you will not go back home. Not all of you will go back home. We also need to use our judicial systems as well, petitioning our government, asking them to explain to us why certain roles require such experience number of years. Because even in county governments, they publish call for applications for director of youth in the county government. And they ask again for 10 years of experience. Do you need 10 years of experience to become a youth officer in your county, in your community? We need to take these clauses and take them to court. And when Kenya wins on that basis, you need to also take it to your countries and tell your courts and your governments that Kenya did this. Why are you not doing what Kenya is doing? And because in Kenya, we are going to take what Botswana is doing and ask, Botswana is doing this. Isn't Botswana an African country? Why can't we also do it here in Kenya? Because we keep influencing each other, just the way we influenced each other during the walk of independence. Countries gained independence almost at the same time, 1957, 1960, 1961, 63, all the way to the 70s. This is a span of 10 years. So we need to make this Gen Z movement an African movement, where African nations can be able to liberate themselves from the oppression and the oppressors. So what young people must do is we must keep following what our governments are doing, both legally and on the streets where necessary, because there are still so many issues of young people that we need to counter, even before we go to political parties. I think that's the next Kenyans need to petition. Political Parties Act in Kenya says you need to have offices in over 24 counties across Kenya. The Gen Z movement was done on X. We don't need those requirements. They are too stringent, and they are giving us more and more obstacles in getting to where we want to get to. And I think these and other more, even in the previous panel, they talked about looking at the legality of some of the issues that we are affecting us. It's the laws that are affecting us. So let's revise them and review them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I agree with you. But allow me to share this. There is no one size fit approach. What was being used in Kenya, I don't think that is going to be used in Rwanda, for instance, completely. There is a need of assessment, assess how is the country context, each and everything.
Just give a quick rejoinder, because Kenya has a plastic ban that was instituted about, I think, 5 or 10 years ago. Guys, you can help me. Why it did that? It took that aspect, it took that law from Rwanda. So Rwanda affected Kenya because it banned plastic bans, and it was so well done. Kenya picked it up, and now Kenya has a plastic ban policy, which is something that was borrowed from another country. But I hear you that it is not in every set, but in a similar fashion.
Thank you very much. Dear Zaha, by acknowledging the critical role that you play in shaping political and social landscape, and considering your extensive experience in advocating for gender equality and youth empowerment, what are the specific strategies do you believe political institutions and civil society organizations can implement to create a more inclusive spaces for youth engagement?
I think I'll speak for Kenya and not necessarily to outlaw other African countries, but specifically to speak to the fact that we are all experiencing, yes, the same thing, but in different contexts. And one thing that I think I want to bring out very strongly in our engagement is how important social media has been within the Gen Z movement. And I've heard here from morning how we have been told we are just TikTokers. Well, TikTok taught us the finance bill. X brought the president to his knees, etc. Instagram was utilized to have all the influencers be radicalized through a cancel culture. And so we had every single person we see on TV saying the same thing we were trying to say. It is these social media platforms that have been demonized, and it is by design to ensure that young people cannot find any other alternative that is fully theirs. And this is the message I want to bring across. The reason why the leaderless, formless, motionless is so disturbing to this government is because there's no systemic way to control it. And for as long as you can't control something, it makes it very, very expensive to cut it short, to disinform and to misinform. And that's exactly what we Gen Z are trying to do, is to suffocate your money in things that don't work. It's to suffocate the old tricks so that they understand the new dogs are in. And what does this mean? When we mobilize ourselves, and I'll speak predominantly to the end femicide movement, and it's a strategy that we can be using over and over again. And I want us, Gen Z, this is also something we need to come to peace with. We are not being given spaces to negotiate, which is something that I think my panelists can get into. It's not like young people are not in spaces where they knock these doors and take these memorandums. They are not taken into consideration in the first place. So even when we do push, because we have seen young people, she has been a student leader. We can count the number of times, even during the end femicide movement, we did go to Pasaris's office. Was it opened? No. And so we have found a way to create other alternatives that do not necessarily need me to clap for the fish for swimming. The Constitution tells every single government official what exactly you're supposed to do when you get into office. My work as a citizen cannot be to come and remind you of the same thing that the Constitution does. And so when accountability is looking violent, as they would want to put it, and that's in protest and that's in big numbers, because the only thing that the June protest did that was too ambiguous was the fact that we never had a meeting point to come and convene with our tribes, with our class, and tell each other we meet. No, Kenyans had one unifying factor, and it was the fact that as human beings in this jurisdiction, there is something wrong with the finance bill. And we were outside, same to femicide. And when we're seeing young people focusing on issue-based advocacy, that's exactly where the problem is, because when you target issues, you render every politician unemployed to some extent, because you affect their money, you affect their political narrative, you affect their corruption, you affect their political party structures. And all these things is exactly what Gen Zs are trying to do. And it's a strategy that has worked. It has worked in so many places. It's just that, again, we have this system of erosion in Africa, whereby everything that either women or young or marginalized groups do touch is not part and parcel of the main narrative that proceeds to the next generation. And Gen Z have found a place whereby you can't delete it, and that's the digital space. And so right now, we usually say everything that is, whatever is in the internet, something. You can't delete it. And so right now, when you're as a politician, you're trying to come and vie for a seat, or we'll release the tweets that you did release. And we have seen a couple of them, Madam Elachi being a victim too. We have seen so many politicians being strangulated with accountability on an open platform. But then if the people have the power, where is the enforced disappearances coming from? Where are the abductions coming from? Yet we have courts. If at all there is a problem with the active citizenry that is happening in the Gen Z, it's only the fact that it is uncontrollable, it's unfathomable, it has not, you cannot pinpoint who exactly is in charge of it. The narrative is ambiguous. The narrative brings together one thing that the political class has used in Kenya, and that is unity. We cut the throat of tribalism, we cut the throat of everything else. What strategy that has seemed to work so well from January to December, even with all the defiance we've gotten from government, is that the solidarity of Kenyans stood on the issue and not the other way around.
Thank you very much. Allow me to move to Mr. San. I will come back to you. Dear Mr. San, how are you?
I'm very fine.
We explore the challenges and the solutions related to youth participation, and it is very crucial to consider various factors that can either hinder or facilitate this engagement. Considering your expertise at Plomad Foundation Nigeria, could you please elaborate on how education needs to evolve, how technology can be utilized effectively, and what are the role of intergenerational collaboration plays in breaking down barriers to youth participation?
All right, thank you so much for that question. But before I go straight to respond to that, I would love to recognize the presence of my people from Nigeria, the Nigerian Youth Futures Fund. They have really been a strong supporter of ProMAD Foundation since its inception in 2022. So I see it. So going straight to the question, there are a lot that we can do, and the education, technology, and intergenerational transfer of knowledge could do to help accelerate youth participation in politics and also breaking the barrier as identified. One, we cannot overemphasize the importance of education. Like, according to Nelson Mandela, he refers that youth should try to attain the highest form of education as leaders of tomorrow, because it is the knowledge that you acquire through these education through activities that you would utilize to make governance better. And they will understand that knowledge is power and information is very, very liberating. And it is important that as young people, we do not discountenance the importance of getting ourselves educated on how to participate in governance, because I believe strongly, though I do not want to align entirely to that the youth are ignorant, but then an informed youth knows how to participate in government. An informed youth would know what to do when their government is not delivering on their deliverables, or not following what the budget is clearly stating. So I believe that education would help us in a very big way to follow up on political activities. And but then there's also another important thing that we should not look away from. That is the importance of technology. At ProMat Foundation, we're also seeing how we could take advantage of that particular aspect. While we focus on empowering the agencies of youth to be educated to participate in politics, we can also take advantage of technology platform. And when we're talking about technology, we should also be interested in the online technology platform and also the offline technology platform that we can use to directly engage people in grassroots community. And for intergenerational transfer, though there's a stereotype that people from politics would want to say that the young people have no experience in political activity, which is a lie. But then there's a need for collaboration between this particular set, the older people and the younger people. We need to meet to see how we could discuss to make governance better. And we can do that through example of that is happening in Nigeria. We have something like the Legislative Mentorship Initiative, where a legislator himself, they are setting up fellowship programs, training programs, where young people can come into government to learn about the practices of legislators. They can come into to learn about the practices of states. So through that particular platform, I believe that we can help breach the barrier that youth are experiencing in politics, because this would help make them informed and would help them that when they are participating in politics, they do that from an informed perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, for the mic. Mr. Santiago, given your extensive experience in international political development across various sectors, could you share some successful strategies or case studies that have effectively empowered youth engagement in politics? Additionally, which of these approaches do you believe that can be replicated across regions? Thank you.
Yes, I'll keep it brief and I'll mention two things, and they both relate to sort of the public youth sector. The civil society youth sector is very developed, as we can all see, but the public youth sector is really where we need to like really strengthen it. Starting a little bit from the local perspective. For those who don't know, local politics can be very impactful. It's very well connected to the issues of the community, of your neighborhoods, of your district, of your municipality, whatever level it is, and it's a way for you to start engaging in politics from a very young age. There's not so much a partisan like sort of environment. It's not a polarized, it's not a controversial. It really is a place where a lot of young people get their start, and a lot of people stay there as well. So to start off with that, there's a lot of countries that have representative bodies for young people at the local level. If I can mention one of them, Philippines, for 40 years has had a system of youth municipal councils that are these bodies of young people, voted by young people with a mandate, and they are directly linked to their own municipality. And they have more than a consultative role. They have a budget to implement things and to like carry out their own activities. This system is now being replicated in many places. In Europe, you have quite a few sort of municipal councils as well. Recently, Colombia started its own system, and now Guatemala is also in Central America, also passed a law to start that similar kind of structure. Going from that into the national sort of youth sector or youth bodies, there are a few things to mention here, and one is related to the local. You need to have different levels. You need to have a local, a regional, and a national level, and they all need to be interconnected. And there needs to be a very strong legal mandate for this. And speaking of legal mandate, it's very important that whatever youth body you have, it has a strong institutionalized link, not just to the equivalent Ministry of Youth or whatever it is, but also to the other institutions, because we all know that young people can contribute to more than just youth policy. They can also contribute to other things, as we know from the expertise that is here in the room today. And finally, one more legal aspect is in terms of clear responsibilities. And a country that has done this very, very well is Liberia. And I was wondering if you can just pass the mic very quickly to my colleague Samuel, who can just briefly describe his experience as coordinator of the Liberian National Youth Body. Very quickly.
Thank you. So again, yes, my name is Samuel Pato. I'm from Liberia. I head the Secretariat on programs for the Federation of Liberian Youth. Just for information, the Federation of Liberian Youth is 50 years old as of last year, and May this year we're making us 51 years old. The Federation of Liberian Youth was established through an act of national legislation. The legislation that during the early 70s started was that the young people needed to be legitimately represented at a national level, not politically linked, but in a civic manner. So they passed a law enacting the establishment of the Federation of Liberian Youth, FLY. And what we do is we essentially mandate government on how we want programs to be coordinated for young people in Liberia. So no organization goes to Liberia to do business with you or talking to us before even talking to the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Even the Ministry of Youth and Sports cautions them and say, you know what, make sure you are talking to FLY because I don't want problem. Of course, we are radical, but we are professionally radical because all the international partners believe in our legal mandate. And when we tell the partners that this body is not working with us, they will not work with you. So the government is under a moral and a legal responsibility to work with us in Liberia. So that's what right now that's we're reviewing our national youth policy to be validating it next month. We couldn't do that because I had to travel to attend the OGP meeting here in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Super. There you go. Just a very practical example of clear responsibilities, legal mandates, and sort of like different levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then you can hold the mic, the executive director and coordinator. Considering your extensive experience in policy development and community engagement, how do you perceive global challenges such as disinformation and climate change shaping the political engagement of youth today, especially in Africa? And additionally, what are the specific examples or trends have you observed that illustrate this impact?
Wow, that's a very informative question. And thanks for saying I have extensive experience. Before I address your question, there's something that was mentioned by my previous panelist that we need young people, electoral commission. We have had young people in government. Joe Musheru was a young person, the Minister of ICT. What did Kenya do during that period of time? Ezra Chiloba, the CEO of IBC, we know famously what he did during that period of time. So it's not just about having young people. Let us push to have merit, because whether you are an old person, whether you are a young child, whether even you are a 14-year-old person in high school, as long as you are able to do the job, you should be given the position. Let's stop just having this blanket of we just have a young person, no matter who it is, because we have had them before and it never never really worked well. So going to the question about climate change, of course, climate change has become a very big issue. We know that in Africa, we are disproportionately affected, and then we are lectured by our friends in the global north that you should use solar stoves. As them, they continue mining coal, they continue develop, they continue even now going to Mars using spaceships that are going to be banned using jet fuel. But of course, Africans are supposed to use, we should stop using charcoal. Just go and install solar panel in your home. So unfortunately, now the climate discourse, there's one section of young people who are now advocating, of course, for more money, and also who are pushing an agenda which is not really African. Because when we see young people protesting against a coal plant being built in Lamu, which will employ 100,000 people there in Lamu, and Lamu itself is one of the poorest counties, and you look at all those activists, none of them is living in Lamu. All of them are living in rich neighborhoods in Nairobi. So you wonder, is it really activism? Is it really love for the environment? Or is it paid activism? So that becomes a question. But then there are also young people who are actually on the ground, who are doing initiatives on food security, on climate adaptation. But unfortunately, these are the young people who don't get support. So how are they going to affect the politics? Now we are seeing resistance because these people who are in the grassroots, who are doing real climate activism, are now coming out and pushing back against these narratives that have been so much in the media, have been so much in the political space, and also on the misinformation issue, because this is a big thing. Again, how do we define misinformation? Because we have seen many times, even the government, when Alfred Mutua was a spokesman, coming out and saying this is misinformation. But at the end of the day, we know this is not misinformation. We've also seen the media, we've also seen during COVID, the World Health Organization of all bodies coming out and saying that COVID cannot be spread from person to person. Then afterwards, we know that that is misinformation. So who defines misinformation and who defines what is fact? So we have to be careful we don't use these labels, because these labels have been used to smear young people who are actually somebody who just comes up with a podcast and says, I'm going to do a podcast to create awareness. And all of a sudden, misinformation. How is it misinformation? Because I've said the military, our mission in Haiti has costed 15 billion. Okay, it may not be true that it's 15 billion, but there's some money that is there. And just raising the question itself, it's not really misinformation, because there. So we have to be careful how we draw the line. But again, I have to insist that as young people, we have to shift the conversation from talking about just having representation of any young person to having systems built on merit, having the right person on the job, avoiding this issue of just affirmative action. Let's just have two persons in the boardroom. No, we want to address the root causes so that every young person can have equal opportunity.
Very important. Thank you very much. We have the political analyst in the room. Dear Orange Meter, given the persistent barriers that hinder youth participation in the political process, what innovative strategies you believe are essential for transforming these challenges into opportunities and meaningful participation?
Thank you. I think the young people, especially from this country that I belong, are quite doing a lot to organize themselves. But there's a lot of effort from the institutions that we have entrusted with leadership, disorganize them, right? They can invest a lot of resources, including forming governments that don't have shape and form, to ensure that young people are disorganized and disoriented from the agenda. It is important that the young people organize themselves. I work with political parties, I understand, as formal institutions of governance. But if they are not giving the young people space, then we need to rethink that we enable these young people to organize themselves from these formal institutions, then come to the table when they're organized and demand for their rightful share. Because if you look at how these institutions are, it is deliberate that they are not giving the young people the rightful opportunities and platforms to be able to advance their agenda. We need to explore, as young people, alternative options. If political parties are not giving you the space, you have the option of going independent to seek for political office. But I know they're here. They might, like Angel, may swallow me for saying that you can go independent, being a youth leader from a political party. Do we have the youth leagues that are actually going to give the young people opportunities to advance their political careers? I don't think so, as much as I work with you. So how else are you going to organize yourselves? Gen Z movements, social movements, bunge la mwananchi, then you come to the table and be able to claim your space. Alternative to money, expensive elections, you have the numbers, you have the capacity, creativity, the IT, you have the to guard the elections. You know, finally, when I finish, Baba is Raila Odinga said that he has been winning elections, but he has never been declared a winner. If a man of that stature has been winning elections and has never been declared a winner, how will you win an election as a young person and be sure that you're being going to be declared a winner in an African country, in Kenya for that particular matter? So we need to utilize the platforms we have to ensure that we protect the votes, we vote, but most importantly, protect the votes and ensure that young people declared the winners when they win. Thank you.
Wow, what a great session. What a great session. The mics are conspiring against you, sorry.
I would like to request the MC to help us to take two questions. One for the in-person audience and one for our online audience.
All right, those who have not spoken, I see a hand back there, here, and that side. One question every row.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Diana Oma from okay. My name is Diana Oma. I work with Youth for SDGs Kenya, and my question goes to Brian Githinji. You spoke very passionately about young people who are doing exemplary work at grassroots levels and don't get opportunities to engage at such discussions. My question to you is, as a youth leader and as a passionate advocate, as we can all see, what have you done to amplify the voices of these young people? Most of the time we talk about this, but also as individuals, what initiatives are we taking to support the young people at grassroots levels who don't have access to such platforms that we're privileged to have? So that is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Short and sweet.
Okay, I would also like to hear a response from Brian. So the issue of tokenism, because I feel like, especially in the African context, there's an illusion of progress while maintaining the status quo among the youth. So I feel like there's just an illusion of like we are flower girls. I'm wondering, is there meaningful participation amongst the youth, or are we just being used as tokens, not only by fellow Africans, but also by the global north, to create an illusion of progress, but there is no meaningful participation amongst the youth? Thank you.
Wow, short and sweet. One gentleman.
Thank you so much. Bonjour. My name is René Edouard Mendes. I come from Senegal, West Africa, and we speak French in my country. I attend to this meeting as a youth ambassador for the YDC. My question would be for all of the panelists. I believe it's time to go beyond declaration. And what concrete mechanism can we put in place? Concrete mechanism as both national and local levels to ensure meaningful participation of youth in political decision making across Africa. I want to hear from you if you have some examples, concrete, that can inspire us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We read one from the online participants. I rush here. Yes, for our online participants, yes, we have Honorable Elizabeth Kamau and Dennis Rukundo. Got a question. Should democracy have a general definition, or it should be defined depending on the context? Then another one. We are glad to join online. We appreciate the Global Democracy Coalition for the leadership. And of course, there are many. What form of democratic systems has Kenya adopted, either in phases or as a unit? All right. We hope that panelists will wrap it up. My timekeeper, it's 1 minute each.
Okay. Thank you so much. It can be 1 minute because it's two questions. Let's also respect the audience, I believe. So, to Madam, to your question, which is a very nice question. I'm sorry I didn't capture your name because I was talking on the other side. But the question about how we involve, it's a question that keeps me up at night, keeps our team at night. And one thing that we developed is that because we are an organization that relies on consultancy, we don't rely on grants because we don't believe in this culture of begging white people and they won't give you the grants, or when they give you, it will come with conditions. So we do consultancies a lot. And when we do consultancies in our data collection, we always give priority and opportunity to young people who live in those areas. Remember how other organizations do it, especially the UN. They would bring a consultant from Nepal to come study about Mira growing in Kenya. We don't do that. We go and collect young people from that area. Another thing that we do is on debates. And debates are always to give young people who have the ability to speak a platform for them to be seen. And we have organized, last year we organized 4 debates. The latest debate that we did was in Mombasa. Again, we don't do it in the capital city, Nairobi, and we don't do it in elite schools, i.e. the private schools like the one we are in, though we are grateful for the facilities, but we don't do it there. So we do it to public. So those are the 2 ways. Of course, in future, we would like to engage more. To the other question about tokenism, that's a very real threat, and it's the reality. And that is why you will see that even, for example, the COP. I have never gone to COP because it's hypocrisy. I mean, if you're going 100,000 people to fly somewhere to talk about climate change, if you believe in climate change, then why are you emitting the emissions? So anyway, for the people who go there, the young people who go there, let's speak the truth. The young people who go there, in the negotiations that happen, because in COP there's blue badge. You know, when I learned the system, I was even shocked. There's blue badge, there's another badge, there's green badge. So young people mostly will have green badge. Their work is to walk around, take photos for Instagram. The ones with the blue badge are the old people who are now going to make decisions. So of course, young people are used as tokenism because they know population demographics. You have to show you've involved young people. So as young people now, we have to be very careful that we don't fall into this trap that an organization says we are going to create a youth sounding board, but we are not going to give young people jobs. We should refuse. We don't want youth sounding boards. We don't want to be advisors, perennial advisors. We want to be people who solve our issues. My parting shot would be this. Even as we talk about democracy in Kenya, and we are an indirect democracy to the answer, though my brother will explain more. As we talk about democracy in Kenya, as we talk about what the state has been doing in Kenya, we also have to acknowledge what is happening in our neighbors. We know currently in Democratic Republic of Congo, young people are being killed by interference, of course, the Rwandan government, according to the United Nations Secretary General. It's not me. According to the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, in his statement in January, according to a UN experts panel, even the president himself could not deny that Rwandan troops are in Congo. So we know that young people are dying in Congo. We know what is happening in Tanzania, where we have seen recently, now they're heading to the election. There's a member of parliament who's been abducted. And we've seen in Uganda, where I was studying, unfortunately, where young people are always beaten when they just come to the streets to exercise their right of just assembling, not to protest. So even as we talk about democracy in Kenya, we also have to campaign what is happening outside, because at the end of the day, if all those countries, if our neighbors, there's no peace, it will affect us. So we should keep that and bear that in mind. And I love you all. See you soon.
Wow.
Discussion is short.
Okay, to respond to the last question from Rene, I would love to talk about what PROMAD is doing in Nigeria as one of the mechanisms to increase young people's participation in government. So we understand that it is important for us to emphasize the need for civic education and not the general education that we are aware of. And we know that the general education needs some kind of overhaul to meet up with current needs for young people in today's governance process. So Proma Foundation is taking advantage of that particular process to increase the capacity of young people in local communities. And we believe that when the capacity of these young people are increased, they will be able to engage with their government from a well knowledgeable perspective. And how have they been able to utilize this knowledge after this training is being carried out for them? We deploy them back to their communities to follow up, track, and report government projects and programs in their community. This particular strategy have worked for us in several times. We've tried it in 3 states, and it has even encourage the completion of government projects that are happening in those states. And how we do this is we first try to build a relationship with the government leaders. I understand that it is very, very good to engage in protests. It's very, very good to be very firm in holding your leaders accountable. But then there are some other things that we need to still take advantage of, which Nigeria is also trying to work on. And that would involve negotiation and lobbying. If our political leaders can be able to use this particular tool to lobby those illicit activities that they come out to give back to us, then we should consider that particular, since we are bringing in the right information, we should consider that process to ensure that they make us participate by lobbying ourselves to ensuring they bring the right policy framework that makes us included. And we try to work with the government through this program, through our organization. We make a relationship with government stakeholders so that when these local youths are engaging with them, following from the reports they've gotten from the project, maybe they have squandered the money or something happened on the way, then they would have this relationship with them, and it would make the necessary people that are involved, that are directly involved in those projects, to be called to action. And a success story from that would be, I'll just talk about one, the completion of primary healthcare center in one of the local community, following the advocacy from one of our young fellow. Thank you so much.
Yes, very quickly on the question online on a general definition of democracy. No, I don't think we should have one. I was planning on saying something else about mechanisms for participation for young people, but I like debating, and I kind of want to take you up a little bit on the consultative kind of roles, advisory roles that you pointed out for young people. I think they can be very important. I understand your point as well about the remuneration and the importance for young people to feel emboldened in their roles. But I think there's a lot of people here, and Wally, I know that you've had some advisory roles and some roles that didn't necessarily have a proper remuneration or proper salary. They have other benefits. They have like a capacity building benefit. They have a mentoring benefit. They have a benefit sometimes of attending international conferences. And that is very important for someone young who is starting out and who has a true vocation of public participation. That's maybe something that is nice and that we should keep. If you start remunerating these advisory roles, there's a lot of people that will take it as a career. And then you go into like a big issue that we have with civil servants, right? That people go into the civil service because it's a nice career. So like we should keep the value of these roles as like the benefit of public participation. That should be obvious to young people. It shouldn't be money is important, but it shouldn't be primarily a monetary issue. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 1 minute. I will donate 30 seconds. On the last question here around the concrete measures on how to ensure the young people's participation in democratic processes, I think democracy building in Africa has always been funded from the West. It is important that African governments must be very deliberate to invest resources in democracy building work if indeed African countries believe in democracy. We don't have to rely on Europe and USAID to be able to give us money to capacity build or to do civic education in this country if we believe in that particular process. So African countries must be encouraged as part of budget making process to put resources on democracy building processes. The last thing, the definition of democracy. We have been grappling with even this country, Kenya, on whether we have a universal definition of democracy. If you go to the northern parts of this country, they do practice negotiated democracy, which works very well in a very peaceful way without any fight. When you come to down parts of the Kenya, the southern parts, where we go for competitive even nominations, we fight a lot. So do we have a universal definition of democracy? Is the Western definition of democracy sufficient in Africa or in Kenya? Or we need to have democracy away? Is a question that we cannot answer. There is a discussion worth having. Thank you.
In pure controversy. That's why I'm thinking we can close it. Yeah. Yeah. I
Thank you.
oh, okay. Yeah, please.
Wow. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can say thank you and goodbye. Yeah, maybe in 30 seconds.
Okay. So sorry, you pressed for time. We just had so much we had prepared. But maybe to sum it up, I think we have a intergenerational conflict in Africa. And one of the things that we even saw, even in Kenya with the Gen Z protest, it was about young people against the entire system. And even for Kenya, even in the next election, it will be a very interesting one because it's going to be a generational kind of advancement at that time. And it will be very exciting to see how that works out. And even as we are working on intergenerational conflicts, even in politics, even at our workplaces, even when you're working with the UN and there's the UN Youth Envoy, the African Youth Envoy, those advisory panels, they're very challenging to work with because you find people in a different generation already within those bureaucratic institutions. So as when we're talking about concrete mechanisms, I think we need to go back and see how we can have intergenerational dialogues amongst us to see exactly how can we move on as a society, because even these older ones, we can't leave them. They're still part of society. They are the ones who have the capital, the money. They're also the ones holding major decision-making spaces. So let's learn how we can work together, the younger generation and the older generation. Thank you. And thank you so much, Zaha.
Thank you very much. We need to take a group photo as our moderator makes one comment. We need to rise for the group photo as our moderator makes a comment. Yeah.
We have to take a group photo. We have to take a group photo. Or let me conclude and then we'll take it.
In 1 minute, Kylie.
Okay. I would like to request you all to lend me a round of applause to thank our panelists for sharing the insightful comments. And this theme, let not be just a theme. It's a call for action for all of us. Let's keep this conversation, and let's leverage our networks, share resources, and support the initiatives that amplify youth voices. Thank you very much.